I think focusing on training, education, competition in the workplace so that we can continue to see that wage growth increase is a better answer than telling businesses how they should be run. Again, our economy here in Utah is the best in the nation. We are ranked #1 almost every year for our pro-business policies and for our economic development and growth. I'm thankful to be a business owner here, and I believe that increasing wage growth comes through those principles that I just described of training, education, and increased competition. As we continue to build out our workforce so that we compete for the jobs of tomorrow, that's how we get wages up here in Utah.
I think the #1 thing we need to do to improve economic development in this state and increase wages is invest in strategic investments in education now. Our children are our greatest resource, they are our greatest commodity, and we need to give them the resources they need and the tools they need to succeed in the economy in the future. And I think strategic investments now in such things as having a great, high-quality teacher in every classroom, making sure that we address our teacher shortage, address our overcrowded classrooms, will give our kids the skill set that they need to really succeed. As you know, there's a huge shortage of skilled labor in this state, whether it's skilled tradesmen or in the tech industry. I hear about it every day from leaders in the community. And I think if we aren't focusing on developing that workforce in elementary school, we're not going to have these jobs, these high-paying jobs that we want to come here down the line. Secondly, I think that air quality is an economic development issue. I was just at WCF last week talking to their top recruiter. They cannot attract talent to this state because folks fly in for the interview, they see the muck that we're breathing and realize they don't want to bring their family here to breathe this air and make their family sick. These are top 2 things that we need to do to address economic development, and I think focusing on those will also drive wage growth. I also think we need innovative solutions to some of these problems. I supported Representative Edwards' bill this past session that would have allowed for state employees to have a Family Medical Leave Act, and this is an innovative way to attract workers and add value to the workforce and add to that benefit package to make sure that families have the leave and the paid leave they need to take care of a loved one or a child or what have you, and I would have supported that bill by Representative Edwards. Thank you.
It is awesome to have so many of you and have you be so enthusiastic, but if you'll hold your applause until the very end, we'll get through a lot more topics, and then we can give them the applause that all of those great answers deserve. Deal? All right. So you both alluded to something that my next question addresses, and that's specifically job growth in Utah's technology sector. That sector has been growing so quickly in Utah that employers are struggling to find qualified employees. And the Economic Development Corporation of Utah states that the Utah tech sector already employs 60,000 employees, but is in need of at least 15,000 more. If elected, what steps would you take to make Utah a more appealing place for highly skilled workers?
Again, I think #1 and #2 are we need to invest in local education and strategic investments in making sure we have high quality teachers in every classroom, reducing class sizes. And I think another, specifically addressing this issue, is almost half the high schools in Utah don't even have advanced computer programming classes in high school. And I don't believe kids are just suddenly going to get interested in these STEAM fields and tech jobs once they hit 18, 20, and 21. We need to introduce these concepts in elementary school. We need not only just engineering programs, but we need arts programs to be enriched and a huge focus in K through 12 to make sure these kids get excited about these concepts and introduce art plus engineering solutions as early as kindergarten. Other schools in other districts in other states do this well, and they're training the job force of the future. Secondly, there are, as you mentioned, there's over 4,000 unfilled tech jobs right here in this state, in this valley as we speak. And if we're not able to attract these top talented folks from other states, we're going to lose these high-paying jobs to other states. I hear about it every day from business leaders. I'm active in the Sandy Area Chamber of Commerce and on their public policy committee, and we along with the Salt Lake Chamber, have developed initiatives to prioritize how we attract labor and how we attract top talent to our state. And I'll tell you what, it's the business community leading out on solving these tough issues, and the legislature is lagging way behind. We need new people with new voices and fresh ideas up there to tackle these problems, or we're going to get the same tired ideas and lack of solutions that we have.
Mr. Bonham.
I recently had an experience with a company called Domo. I was one of their beta clients. We're big in data in my business. We do e-commerce drop shipping. So when you buy something on the internet, that order comes to me and I fulfill it to your door. Domo had a really innovating way to look at this. Certainly we need to continue to invest more into our education. No doubt about it. Attract top teachers, roll out tech-focused programs, STEM, everything that we've kind of already hit on tonight. Very important. What Domo has been doing, which I found brilliant, which has actually helped us train a number of people, they're actually reaching out to colleges. So this is a private business, well, they recently went public, private business that is actually taking the initiative to go out to colleges, find the right people, bring them in-house, and train them internally. And then they offer those employees to us. And I thought, in many of these situations, businesses like ours, like Domo, we look for opportunities to innovate, to go out, find the right employees, train them correctly, build them up so that their wages go up, so that their lifestyle is able to go up, so they can actually afford housing here in Sandy and Draper. I look to private business for the opportunity to continue to innovate. Like Suzanne said, sometimes the legislature lags behind, and so that's up to us as business owners, as job creators, to be proactive, get out there, train these people up. Thanks.
So the next topic we'll address is related. Utah's growing economy, the great quality of life that you both mentioned, has caused the population in Utah to explode. The University of Utah's Gardner Policy Institute projects that Utah's population will double by 2065, and that this growth rate varies between twice and 4 times the national average. This summer, Utah Policy reported that Kristen Brown, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Management and Budget, identifies population growth as one of Utah's biggest challenges and opportunities. What policies, specific policies, would you support to help maximize these opportunities and overcome the challenges of Utah's rapidly growing and demographically shifting population? Mr. Bonham.
So certainly, I had read by 2050 that the state was going to double in population. And so what does that mean for us here in Salt Lake? How do we handle roads? How do we handle infrastructure? How do we handle education? It's important to note that our government, our Republican-led legislature, is looking at these issues. Representative Christensen here in the audience today, this is a big focus of his. It's a big focus of many of the legislators here. We know population growth is going to double. And so what we do today will determine our success when that population growth happens. Certain initiatives in the state that we already have. Envision Utah, working with local governments to make sure that we have a plan for both affordable housing, transit-oriented development, things along those lines, so that we can actually have people live here in the valley that need to live here, so that we can actually support people as they travel to and from work or to and from school. Supporting those kind of initiatives on a local level, helping local governments plan and develop for the future is critical.
Ms. Harrison.
So you're right, recent reports have compared our cost of living increases and housing increases to what's going on in Silicon Valley in California. Well, I graduated from college in Silicon Valley, and I assure you, we do not want to become like California in that way or pretty much any other way. Housing affordability impacts all of us, and this is going to take a statewide solution. No one community can handle this alone with their patchwork solutions. If you look at what's happening in Harriman or Holiday or Sandy, each community is being burdened with this issue, and if you look at it, it's being pushed by developers. And I think we need a statewide plan as well to make sure that we have Utah values in mind with a mix of single-family homes, protecting open space, and also adopting mixed uses as well. But first and foremost, we need to respect existing communities. Putting a high-density development in the middle of Sandy, it's already overcrowded with congestion and traffic, does not make any sense. Our schools are already overcrowded and we don't have the infrastructure This is why we need a statewide plan with a statewide solution, and one that has innovative ideas that recognize that transportation and employment and housing all are interconnected. I happen to serve on the Envision Utah's subcommittee for Point of the Mountain Commission, and that is the right approach. We need all the stakeholders at the table together, making a plan for the future that respects existing communities and does this where it makes sense. And I can tell you this, if elected, I will listen to what the residents in this community want and prioritize your views and your needs in the state legislature, and I am beholden to no special interests or private developers.
Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about housing affordability, and one of the consequences of the growing or the increasing cost of housing in the state, and particularly in the Salt Lake area, is housing insecurity. On August 12th, a multi-jurisdictional group of state officials met to discuss Operation Rio Grande and suggest future action related to homelessness in Utah. While 3 homeless shelters have opened in Salt Lake City in the past year, it's clear that homelessness continues to be an important topic for the state as it deals with both population growth and the increasing cost of housing. If elected, what steps would you take to address the issue of homelessness? Ms. Harrison.
I actually just got a call about this very issue this past week with residents in our community concerned about what's going on in Dipple Park and some of the homeless population dispersing from downtown down into our community. And this is a huge concern, not just for the safety of those folks that happen to be homeless, but also the safety of our community. And I think this is an issue that we're not going to be able to solve without everyone coming together. And some of the solution involves we need better support and funding for addiction treatment and mental health services. Our healthcare system in this state and in this country is broken, and we need people with a background in these areas to really come up with innovative solutions to address these challenges. We need, like I said before, we need a statewide plan to address housing affordability and do it in a way that makes sense with existing communities and the infrastructure and challenges already inherent in existing communities. And we need everyone. This is not a Salt Lake problem or a Sandy problem or a Draper problem. This is a statewide problem that needs all of us to come together because we need to treat this with compassion and human dignity and make sure we have a long-term solution that is not just arresting people and impacting our public safety. Thank you.
Mr. Bonham.
Certainly it's a problem. Certainly we all care about it. And I would echo Suzanne's comments. This is an us issue. This is happening in our community. I can tell you kind of what we've done personally and at Walker Edison. So we have reached out to a number of local, both homeless shelters, the road home, things like that, to hire, train, and support employees through a transition. In many cases, there are mental health problems. In most cases that we have seen, there are alcohol dependency or drug issues. These things have to be addressed so that these people, men and women, can return to be productive citizens here in Utah. And we've had tremendous success doing that. Most of these people don't have a support system like you and I have. Most of them have wound up on the street with their mental health problems, with their drug and alcohol dependency, and they have not been able to get the treatment. I think our focus needs to be on helping them get treatment for both mental health and their dependencies that have brought them to such a low point. And that's what I would focus on as a legislator.
I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on that question and ask each of you to respond specifically to the efforts made in this last year, the Operation Rio Grande efforts. Do you support them? Would you support future actions like that? Are there things that you think could be improved upon going forward based on the lessons taught from those efforts? Mr. Bonham.
So first of all, I applaud anyone that's willing to take on this kind of a tough issue. This was really challenging. I know our own representative, I know Representative Hughes spearheaded these efforts. That was hard. That took a lot of courage to go down and try to clean up the streets, try to help people, try to get people off the streets that shouldn't have been on the streets, that were dangerous. I would wholeheartedly support something like that again, yes. I go downtown now, and we are able to feel safer. We are able to walk freely. We're able to go shopping. There was a massive problem in downtown Salt Lake that Operation Rio Grande helped us solve, and I hope that we can look at that as a positive, a net positive for our communities, These are people that put themselves on the line in what might not have been the most popular thing to do, and I applaud them for it.
Ms. Harrison.
I agree. I think Speaker Hughes is to be commended, Lieutenant Governor Cox, Mayor Ben McAdams. I really appreciate the bipartisan nature in which this has been tackled in our state, or at least attempted to be tackled. We're not done yet. We still have a long road to go on addressing this issue in a humane and effective way. In terms of things I think Rio Grande could have done better, we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. Again, this is a medical and a mental health issue that reflects the broken system in which we live in terms of healthcare. And we need people up there that understand the complexity and issues facing healthcare and how to improve delivery in an affordable and cost-effective way, and I will be that voice. I'm hearing from people on the ground that yes, a lot of money, more than $60 million is going towards this, but we don't have enough treatment beds. We don't have enough funding for mental health services, and even if we did have enough funding, we don't have the trained workforce trained in evidence-based addiction therapy in this state currently. This is a workforce issue and a skilled labor issue as well in the healthcare sector, that we need these folks on the ground with evidence-based therapy so that families that are in a desperate situation aren't taken advantage of by get-rich-quick schemes. I think we need to make sure we address affordability and availability of these treatments.
Let's move to a new topic. Let's talk about education for a moment. It was something you both addressed in your opening statements. The Salt Lake Tribune reported in March that following the compromises between the legislature and efforts made by the Our Schools Now initiative, some were hailing 2018 as the year of education in Utah. However, even if the projection that these compromises will add $845 in per pupil spending per year proved to be true, that still leaves Utah in the bottom 10% of states in annual per pupil education funding. All of this is to say that this year's victories are only part of the effort to improve Utah's public education system. What policies or reforms do you think are still needed to achieve Utah's best educational outcomes? Mr. Bonham.
Did I just answer first?
You took the first one to follow.
Okay, cool. So let me talk about education really quickly. This is the #1 topic that I hear when I go out to town halls, when I'm canvassing, when I'm knocking on doors. Very important. Per pupil spending is one key performance indicator that we can monitor. Very important. That being said, it's not the only KPI that we can monitor, okay? So we are second to last, as far as I know, in per pupil spending. We have larger families here in Utah, but our teachers actually get better test scores per dollar than any state in the country. I would applaud our teachers in this state for the excellent work that they do. It is absolutely unbelievable. I'm thankful as a father that I had a choice on where to send my kids. When we moved here to Draper, when I was growing up, we had one school, and many of you guys probably, we all just went to one elementary school in our neighborhood. I had 8. I had to tour 8 different elementary schools. My wife loved it. After like 5 or 6, I was like, okay, like let's decide, you know. It was an awesome opportunity for us, though, to try to find the right school for our children. 2 things that I think we can significantly improve. Teacher pay. I was heartened to see Governor Herbert identify teacher pay as his #1 concern going forward with our education system. I know as a business owner, if I'm not competitive with my wages, I will not attract the best talent to help my business move forward. The same rule applies in our education system. We must have the best and most highly trained people that we possibly can to improve our education system. Last year, we had a surplus of $581 million. I will be voting no against Prop 1. Prop 1 taxes the very people that we are trying to protect. The people who 10 cents a gallon makes a big difference. We have to do more with the surplus that we have to improve education.
Ms. Harrison.
So I'm proud to be the mom of 3 kids in local public schools, and that's a notable difference between me and others in the race, and I am committed to improving public education. I'm not proud of the fact, however, that we are dead last in the country in per student funding, and this has real world implications. My daughter Ellie had 37 kids in her English class last year. We have a serious teacher shortage. Almost half of our teachers leave the profession within 5 years, and we have a serious mental health crisis going on in our schools in this state. I think now, with our economy being strong, is the time for strategic investments in education. I also believe we need less testing, more local control and accountability, and this can be done through proven, targeted, cost-effective means. For example, we need more teacher mentoring programs. This is a cost-effective, proven way to keep new teachers in the classroom. We need to make sure we have mental health counselors in our schools, and we need more reading specialists in our early elementary years to make sure kids are proficient in reading by age 3rd grade. These have all been done and they've all been effective, and we need to continue to prioritize such cost-effective means. I think improving local public schools is the best thing we can do for our economy, and there's plenty of money to be had in this state, but we need to reprioritize how it's spent. It's amazing to me that we have $53 million for a deep sea coal port in Oakland, California, or $50 million to rebrand UTA, but we can't come up with enough money to pay our teachers what they're worth or address our class sizes. You can bet with my kids going to school right alongside your kids in public schools, I will fight for their future and I will be a fierce advocate for public education in this state.
So one part of the education question is how we fund it and how we direct that money. The other is our education policies. One issue that's been gaining traction in Utah recently has been competency-based education. In an article in Utah Business from January of last year, Senator Ann Milner is quoted as saying, "Mastery-based or competency-based education would not be a mandate, but we want to give districts and schools who want to have more mastery-based learning the opportunity to do it. The goal is to remove barriers." In your opinion, what are the benefits as well as the pitfalls of pursuing these goals of more access to competency-based education? And do you support this approach to education in Utah? Ms. Harrison.
So I am all for competency-based education as long as it is not code word for removing effective teachers in the classroom. Because far and away, data has shown the most effective way to improve student success is a high-quality, highly educated, highly trained, and supported teacher in the classroom. And I don't think any amount of technology can replace that. In fact, there is minimal to no data that technical or software programs can ever replace a high-quality teacher, and I feel strongly about that. However, we should encourage innovation in our public schools as long as it's coupled with accountability and follow-up to make sure we're not just throwing money down the drain. For example, this legislature has mandated that our districts purchase certain kinds of software programs. It is mandated, and the schools and districts don't have a choice in whether they do that. Yet there's minimal to no data that this has a lasting impact on student learning. A high-quality teacher in every classroom has a lasting impact, and I absolutely will fight for that in this state.
Mr. Bonham.
So certainly, teachers have the biggest influence in the classroom. I think innovation is key to continuing our education with our students. I think education needs to be handled on a local level. I think the teachers in the classroom know best how to educate their kids. Federal interference, federal mandates, things of those nature that force teachers to teach a certain way when they know it's less effective is inappropriate, and I would get rid of it right away. Supporting teachers with additional mentoring, with those teachers that have proven over a long period of time that they are effective teachers is the most important way we can tackle this, and we must do it on a local level. Our teachers in the classroom know best how to do that.
Thank you. Let's spend some time addressing healthcare. This fall, Utah voters will consider a Medicaid expansion plan that would replace the partial expansion enacted this past year by HB 472. The voter initiative promises to cover about twice the 70,000 people who gain coverage under the legislative plan at a cost of $77 million per year versus the legislature's $30 million. The proposal is funded by a 0.15% increase in the sales tax. Republican lawmakers, however, warn the proposal could be a potential budget buster, especially a federal support waiver during economic downturns. Do you support the ballot initiative to enact a full expansion of Medicaid? If so, how would you answer the criticism levied by Governor Herbert and GOP members of the state legislature who the proposal is fiscally irresponsible. Mr. Bonham.
So, I support Robert Spendlove. He's one of our legislators. He had proposed last time that people that fall just outside of the poverty line, that maybe don't qualify for Medicaid, but still can't afford a decent health care plan. I felt like that was a really good compromise. Our state functions well because we are fiscally conservative. If we enact this, it sounds like a small tax, 0.15. Every time I hear tax increases talked about, it's going to be $4 a month, it's going to be 0.15, it's going to be, it all adds up. And it all adds up to people that can't afford it. If we raise taxes, I think we have to raise roughly $90 million to qualify for the $800 million in federal subsidies. That $800 million goes away from the feds 2 to 3 years from now. Guess who is left paying it? If you want more money for education, if you want more money for roads, if you want more money for all the things that we're discussing tonight, this is something that you must vote against. Otherwise, this will be our biggest expense on our budget for years and years to come.
Ms. Harrison.
So I'm the first to admit as a medical doctor that our medical system is broken, both at the state, federal, and including Obamacare. But I've been in the operating room taking care of far too many patients who were incredibly sick in an emergency situation that waited too long to get the health care that they needed. And they delayed treatment because they didn't have access to affordable health care or their deductibles were sky high. And they waited until it was an emergency that you and I pay for in the form of higher premiums every single day. I've been on ride-alongs with local police in Sandy Fire Departments, both fire and police in Sandy, where the same cycle happens. They pick up someone with an emergency situation on the street, they drop them off at Altaview Emergency Room, then they cycle to the jail, back to the street emergency jail. You and I are paying for this as taxpayers every single day. Now, we can continue to pay for that, or we can enact something like what Governor Herbert recommended, which was the Healthy Utah Plan, and I fully supported that, and our legislature killed that in a closed-door session a few years ago. This initiative, Prop 3, isn't perfect, but it is a conservative and fiscally responsible choice. This initiative is fiscally conservative in that it is going to allow for preventative care and primary care for 150,000 people in this state that don't currently have it. And I would add that Representative Spendlove's bill is likely to be inactivated by a waiver denial based on what's happened in other states. This initiative will bring taxpayer dollars that we're already paying to the tune of $800 million a year back home from Washington, D.C. to help our people and help our economy. And this is going to strengthen our economy with that $800 million to add health care for the people in this community to the tune of 14,000 new jobs that will be provided by this and $1.7 billion a year in economic activity. And I believe that healthy workers and healthy people make productive workers and productive people, and I fully support this, and it has a built-in funding mechanism to make sure taxpayers aren't on the hook.
Can I reply? So this is one area in which my opponent and I obviously disagree. Being fiscally conservative, which we throw out, does not mean raising taxes. You are not a fiscal conservative if you raise taxes. This will be the biggest line item in our state's budget for years and years to come. If there's one person sitting before you that understands the true cost of health care, I pay every single one of my employees' health insurance premiums every single month. And I have since the day I started my business. It goes up 30% a year. The federal government is telling me which plans I can and cannot buy, and they're mandating and strangling me as a business owner for the lack of competitive practices in the industry.
Ms. Harrison, follow up, and then we have another health-related question.
So first of all, this Republican-controlled legislature raises taxes every year, so that's a false argument. And secondly, this proposal for spending $1 will bring over $8 that we're already paying in taxes. You and I have no choice whether or not we're going to pay those taxes. They're already going to Washington, D.C. It will bring $800 million of our own money back to Utah to help our economy.
All right. Well, we found an area of distinction. That's good. Let's move to the new issue. It's related to healthcare, and it's the opioid epidemic, which has been on the minds of lots of Utahns. The National Institute on Drug Abuse stated that in 2016, Utah saw over 466 opioid-related overdose deaths, or more than one a day. The Utah Department of Health stated that from 2013 to 2015, Utah ranked the 7th highest in the country for drug overdose deaths. Drug poisoning deaths have outpaced deaths due to firearms, fires, and motor vehicle crashes in Utah since 2002. So the question is, if elected, what steps would you take to combat the opioid addiction crisis at the state level? Ms. Harrison.
So this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that I've lost 2 friends to this disease of addiction and narcotic overdose. And this knows no socioeconomic barriers, and it is destroying families in our community. Last year, over 635 people in Utah died from narcotic overdose deaths. And there's a lot of people that need to come together to address this problem. There are over 24 counties in Utah suing pharmaceutical companies who need to be held accountable for the misleading and false advertising that they've fed to the public and healthcare providers for years. And we need to hold patients and providers accountable to get more education about the effective use of opioids and how to combat this. My hospital system is doing its part in terms of, in the last year, Intermountain facilities have reduced prescriptions for narcotics by over 38%. And this is an area of expertise that I have as an anesthesiologist. I'm an expert in pain management and the safety of opioids. And a few things are clear. We all need to be engaged to solve this. Secondly, we cannot arrest our way out of this problem in this state. This is a real disease that needs effective treatment. We need evidence-based therapies for this to treat this disease. And we also need to have other options that aren't a funding issue. We need to make sure that we're able to do research on such things as medical cannabis and have availability to such options to make sure that we have other options for patients besides the extremely dangerous options of narcotics. As an anesthesiologist, I have extensive knowledge in this issue, and I will be an advocate for patient safety and our families here in this community and in the legislature to make sure that these things are done with the health and well-being of our community first and foremost.
Certainly, compassion is the first word that kind of comes to mind for someone struggling with opioid addiction. I've known many people, family members, friends, who struggle with this. They go to get a back surgery. They're prescribed something from their doctor that is extremely powerful, and they wind up addicted. This isn't it is a disease. We can look at it like a mental health crisis. It is a disease that these people are battling. I think there's some common sense reforms that we should be looking at. We should be looking at them quickly. I've already begun working with our federal delegation. John Curtis will be with me on Saturday in working with the feds to legalize marijuana in a way that makes sense, taking it from a Tier 1 drug to a Schedule 2 drug, and being able to control that. I echo the church's sentiment when they said, hey, this needs to be prescribed by a doctor, controlled tightly, or else we're going to wind up like Las Vegas or California or Oregon or Colorado, where cannabis use is rampant. It's out on the street. I was in Las Vegas last Friday night, and there's a sign right on I-15 that says, call here for your recreational medical marijuana card. We can't let it get to that point. Common sense cannabis reform for people that need it. I have friends whose children have 200 seizures a day with 1 drop of CBD oil. They're down to 1. Anecdotal, yes, but powerful nonetheless.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and address what many see as a related issue directly, and that's Proposition 2 that's on the ballot, the Utah Medical Cannabis Act. According to a July 2018 poll by the Salt Lake Tribune and the Hinckley Institute of Politics, voters support it by a significant margin, but many are concerned about proper oversight and religious freedom. Should the proposition pass, and you can let us know if you support its passage or not, how would you direct the implementation of Proposition 2 to facilitate the legal sale of medical cannabis while safeguarding the individual liberties and safety of all Utahns? Mr. Bonham.
So kind of continuing what we were just discussing. So I will be voting no, primarily because I'm concerned with the loose provisions within Prop 2. And my personal experience in traveling around the country as a business person, seeing what happens when we don't tie down medical marijuana and make it so that it's prescribed and dispensed properly. It turns into a recreational drug that is accessible to children and people that are just looking to get high. And we can't have that. Utah is a clean, safe place. What we need to have is comprehensive reform. I am a little concerned that we haven't passed something yet. Every year the legislature meets, and to be honest, I'm concerned about it. The latest news was that the legislature is going to be in special session in November to try to pass something. That being said, let's not forget, it's illegal. Federally, it's illegal. Even if we pass it here in Utah, the feds will turn a blind eye, hopefully, to my friends that have to medicate their child because that's the only way that he responds properly to his seizures. It is illegal. So working with our federal delegation, passing common sense legislative reform here locally, that's how we get it done.
Ms. Harrison.
So I think there's a reason there are so many initiatives on the ballot this year, and that's because this legislature is out of touch with the needs and concerns of local families in our community. And this legislature has had ample opportunity to address this and failed again and again and again. And I'd like to start off by saying I am fully opposed to recreational marijuana use. But as a medical doctor, I support medical marijuana where there's medical evidence to support it, and we absolutely need a change in federal law to facilitate research on this and get the whole picture. It needs to change from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. And regarding the initiative itself, reasonable people can and do disagree about the specifics. But I ask you to contrast that with my friend and fellow coworker who had a toddler who had severe seizures to the point that he was at risk of brain injury because of it. After trying every single medication, her neurologist suggested trying CBD oil, which was illegal in Utah at the time. She risked jail and conviction to go to Colorado and travel back over state lines, another law breaking, to provide her toddler the only medication that helped control his seizures. He is now an active, healthy preschooler thriving with minimal and very mild seizures. There are a lot of people suffering, and we need solutions, and I believe that because this legislature has failed to act, I plan to vote on this as a call to action that the legislature needs to take on tough issues and address them. And I think on this issue and so many other issues, we need someone like me in office who can help provide the medical expertise to make sure this is done in a safe way. This initiative is not perfect and it needs to be amended, and I will make sure it is amended to provide proper safeguards to protect children and protect access from our youth, and also make sure that local communities have a say in how these dispensaries are regulated and implemented. And without someone like me and my expertise in the legislature, we're going to lose out on a key voice.
Thank you. So we've discussed the initiatives except for redistricting, so we'll turn our attention there now. According to a poll by Dan Jones and Associates on April 2nd, 2018, nearly 58% of Utahns support independent redistricting. And the Salt Lake Tribune reports on July 8th, 2018, that Utahns are in favor of a 7-member independent commission redrawing state political boundaries by a 2-to-1 margin. So, do you support Proposition 4 in the upcoming election? And should the proposition not pass, what steps will you take to respond to the sentiment expressed by these polls that voters believe that Utah's political boundaries could be more effectively and potentially more fairly drawn? Ms. Harrison.
So I believe that Prop 4 is a common sense, practical solution to a problem that happens everywhere in this country. Democrats and Republicans, wherever they are, game the system based on who has control of local municipal organizations and state legislatures. And I believe that this will provide a common sense, independent commission that will provide recommendations in a fair way to what the legislature should do. And of note, this proposal, Prop 4, does not obligate the legislature to enact the recommendations. It is simply a recommendation by an independent commission mixed of both Democrats, Republicans, and independent voices to make recommendations so that in the end, it's people in our districts that are choosing their representatives and their local officials, not local officials gaming the system to pick their voters.
So my problem with this is that it's driven by the Democrats, and so that's why Suzanne would be for it. Constitutionally, every 10 years, our legislature is mandated via the census data to redistrict. These people are elected by us, they are our elected voices, and so what the proposal is we're going to add a level of bureaucracy It's a 7-member board that is not accountable to the people, and it's just a new layer. And like you said, they're not even, like, we don't even have to take their recommendations into consideration on the state legislative level. So I'm against it. If we want change, vote with our mouths and vote with our ballots, okay? Because our state legislature, they report to us. They work for us. If we don't like that, we need to change it.
Ms. Harrison's asking for a follow-up. Before we do that, I want you to take just 1 minute to answer the question of if it doesn't pass, or even if it's a bad idea, which I don't know if you're wrong or you're right, I don't really have an investment, but there's clearly a sentiment that there is some issues with the way that the boundaries are drawn. How would you try to address that sentiment to restore faith in the political process, even if this new layer of bureaucracy, in your view, is not the correct approach? And then move on. Go ahead, yeah, Mr.
Okay. So I think transparency really is key here. If I agree with one thing that is a complaint about many of our government meetings, we need to be transparent with how we do this. We can't be beholden to special interests. We have to open these things up. Concerned citizens should have a say in how things are redistricted. And so that would be my proposition, is consult with the people. Come on in, let's talk about it. How should we do this? Give us your ideas. In my business, I have an open door policy. Any of my employees at any time can come in and talk to me about anything without fear of retribution. And I think that same thing should apply here.
I absolutely agree that transparency is key to this process, and I believe that wherever people are, Democrats and Republicans both game this system throughout the country. But it's funny that in talking about transparency, the last time lines were redrawn in this state, it happened behind closed doors. And too much of the business of the public in the state happens behind closed doors. This proposal will bring more out into the open, and the public will have more say, and I support the business of the public being done in the public.
Thank you both. So I have 2 more questions before we move to closing statements. The first, I promised I would ask last night because I got in trouble with the audience for not. It's about air quality. Over the summer, the Salt Lake Tribune reported that in addition to Utah's decade-long struggle to manage particulate matter air pollution along the Wasatch Front, portions of 7 of the state's counties were formally declared to be in violation of national standards for ozone. A host of factors already contribute to or could worsen these air quality concerns, including Utah's population growth that we've discussed, its continuing reliance on oil and mining industries, and proposed development plans like the inland port proposed for Salt Lake City's northwest quadrant. Why do you believe you're the most qualified candidate to address this issue, and what efforts would you make in the legislature to balance economic development, population growth, and environmental quality for those affected by these and other environmental challenges faced by Utahns? Mr. Bonham.
So this is definitely not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an us issue. Everybody in this room is affected by it. Everyone in this room has to pitch in. We all have to do our part. Let me tell you a couple things that private business is doing here to help mitigate some of these things. We are concerned about it. We are very concerned about it. Like my opponent said earlier, anything that might hinder economic prosperity so that we get additional tax revenue to come into our system so we can pay for stuff that we really want, that's a problem. Anything that might cause my kids' asthma to flare up. I've had a daughter in the hospital overnight because asthma. I mean, the particulates were so bad, the pollution was so bad. 5 years ago, we didn't even have electric cars. Today, I think you pulled up in one, I pulled up in one, I imagine many other people pulled up in one here. I have a friend that runs one of the largest trucking companies in the state. They just ordered 75 all-electric semi-trucks. That didn't exist just a couple years ago. The technology has caught up to the point where it's more feasible for us to participate in green measures. I would treat this like I treat my business. Regulation or punitive measures is not a motivator. Reward incentivization is. And so the opportunity to look for those ways that we can incentivize people to swap out coal or wood-burning stoves, gas-powered yard tools, things of that nature that pollute so heavily, that's really important to continue.
Ms. Harrison.
So I believe clean air is a Utah value, and it's one of my values, and I will work hard to move the dial on this. And this talk of regulations is a real world example of how we can't change the pollution standards and relax emission standards and improve our air quality. This is where the role of government is important. My kids every year are kept indoors from recess because our air is toxic, and as a doctor, my patients complain every year. And recently I met a voter who he was able to beat radiation, he beat chemo, and he beat cancer, but he hasn't been able to beat our air quality. And on the advice of his doctor, he regularly has to leave town in order to breathe. And we live in a unique geography, we love it here, but we need innovative solutions to solve this problem. And I'm tired of talk from the legislature that isn't followed up by substantive action. We need to promote cleaner fuels here in Utah. For 1 cent a gallon, we can have cleaner gasoline here that will reduce tailpipe emissions by up to 80%, and yet that has not been an aggressive priority in this legislature. We need to address air monitoring. There's only one air monitoring station in the entire Salt Lake County that monitors PM 2.5 particulate pollution, and it's nowhere near this district. We can't know what the targeted, cost-effective solutions are if we don't have better monitoring. And I would also note, oftentimes it's broken and in disrepair, and for years this legislature did not fund to get it fixed. And thirdly, this legislature quadrupled fees on electric vehicles in this session. In a state with some of the worst air pollution in the country, that is the wrong direction, and this is why we need new voices. I will vote for policies to encourage clean vehicle access, especially when it's less than 0.5% of the cars on the road. These are the kind of innovative, smart, targeted solutions that will move the dial on air pollution. We value healthy living here, and I will work towards real-world, common-sense solutions to improve our air for our health and also our economic future.
All right, our last question is focused on transparency and ethics in government. In 2015, the Center for Public Integrity ranked Utah 25th and awarded a grade of B- based on an assessment of the laws and systems it has in place to help avoid corruption. Many would argue that during the last legislative session, these systems were further weakened by legislation successfully sponsored by Senator Kurt Bramble. This legislation would make it even more difficult for potential ethics complaints to be reported about government employees by raising the, quote, standard of knowledge necessary to file a complaint. This leaves Utah as one of only 6 states that requires an ethics complaint be filed by someone with first-hand knowledge of a violation. If elected, what steps would you take to try to restore both accountability within government and confidence among Utah voters? What practices or commitments are you willing to make about your own efforts at accountability as a candidate and eventually legislator? Ms. Harrison.
Well, I would start off by saying I would have voted against Senator Bramble's bill to weaken ethics laws in the state of Utah. And I think this is a perfect example of where we need to talk about the public trust. And I feel like in our country and even in our state, we've lost a lot of the public trust. And I believe that we need people in office that will serve with integrity and civility and improve relationships with the people in our districts to engender more trust between elected officials and the public. And I think there's 3 common sense things we can do. First of all, I believe the business of the public should be conducted in public. Too much happens behind closed doors in the Utah legislature with power brokers and backroom deals. And I think as a voter and as a taxpayer, that's not my values. I pledge right here to only attend open door caucus meetings, and I invite everyone in this race to pledge the same. We need to stop the improper role of campaign money and the influence of money in campaign finance. Utah is the wild, wild west of campaign finance law in our country, to the point that there are no limits on the donations that an individual can make to a state race, as evidenced by a $700,000 donation in the last gubernatorial campaign from one individual to a candidate. That is undue influence of money, and I believe that no seat or position should be bought or sold in this state. And thirdly, I believe in term limits. I believe our founding fathers intended for good people in the districts in which they lead to step up and serve and offer their vision of how to improve the community and offer their service. And then after a while, it should be someone else's turn with fresh ideas and a fresh perspective. And I pledge to serve a reasonable amount of time and then encourage other folks to run. I commit to serving with civility, integrity, and respect for all, and I bring an ability to bring people together to solve common sense problems in common sense ways in Utah.
Mr. Bonham.
So, if elected, let me back up just really quick. So, we are a part-time citizen legislature. And so many of us have business interests, many of us are doctors, many of us are real estate people, many of us are business owners. Sometimes there are conflicts that come up because we are a citizen-led legislature. We're part-time. That being said, I commit to be fully transparent with my business, with my financial dealings, with how we run meetings. I report to you. And so it's important for me, for you to be able to come through my door at any time and know exactly what we're working on. And that would be my commitment to you.
Excellent. Thank you. So we've arrived at closing statements. Ms. Harrison went first, and so we're going to allow Mr. Bonham to close out the discussion. So that means that you can also go first with closing statements. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you so much. I entered this race because my kids, Paul, Ellie, and William, and I love them just as much as you love your kids or your grandkids. And I believe our kids need a representative that has their interests at heart. I also entered this race, though, because I didn't feel heard. Too often, my calls, my emails, and my concerns went unanswered. And so, in my campaign, I've chosen a different approach. To date, our team has knocked on over 14,000 of your doors, and I'm serious about wanting to know what you care about and what you want to see from your local elected officials. Let me tell you what I've learned. I've learned our community is ready for representation that is focused on our future and focused on the issues really impacting our families, and someone that will prioritize those issues like education, air quality, fiscal responsibility, and working on affordability of healthcare. I ask you to ask yourself, who in this race is going to return your calls, ask what you think about an issue, ask for your opinion, or take you seriously? I believe it's the person that's already been actively reaching out to you and on your doorstep and already returning your calls. I am running to represent you, and I'm running to focus on the issues that matter to you and your family. Between now and the election, there's going to be a lot of people that try to apply labels to me. But let me tell you, the issues facing our state are much too complex to be boiled down to a box or a neat little label applied to them. Regardless of party affiliation, we need everyone in this community to come together and work with common sense solutions to apply and address the challenges facing our state. I'm beholden to no political party and no private interest. Rather, I'm a moderate with an independent voice that will represent you and your family. And I will answer only to you and your family. But I think I'm a wife, and a medical doctor, and a neighbor, and a primary teacher, and I'm also very, very proud to be a mom. But I think the label that's most applicable to me tonight is Utahn. I'm one of you. I'm a lifelong Utahn. I grew up in Provo. My parents worked at BYU. I graduated from Timpview High School, and I went to medical school here at the University of Utah. John and I chose to move back here and raise our family here because we love Utah, and we love the Utah values. This election is your opportunity to have real representation in the Utah State Legislature, and I want to be your voice. We need people with new perspectives and fresh ideas in the legislature, ones that will be willing to listen to you and learn from the wonderful people in this community. You know who I am, you know what I stand for, and you know what I'll fight for. My name is Suzanne Harrison, and I'm asking for your vote.
And I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm. Democracy is an awesome thing. I'm glad that we live here. I'm glad that we can have respectful disagreements. I'm glad that we can live in the same community and still love each other. I think this is great. I worry that our values that have made our community great are under attack. I worry that the very conservative principles that I cherish, that has allowed my business and my family to flourish, would go away. I worry that labels are thrown around too easily, but substance does not back it up. I will fight for those high-paying jobs. I will fight for an improved education system that is transparent, that if we spend $1, we know where it goes, and we know what the anticipated result is. I will fight for higher teacher pay. Our teachers need to be paid more. They also need more support in the classroom. I will do this without raising taxes. If there's one thing that we pulled away tonight, certainly we want clean air, we want better education. We will do it without raising taxes. Last year we had a massive surplus. As the economic growth of our state continues to increase, we will have more and more dollars to spend on the things that we care about without raising taxes. I deliver results. It's what I've done for 15 years as a business person. It's what I've done in the philanthropic community. I know how to stimulate the economy. I know how to create high-paying jobs. And ultimately, those tax revenue dollars are what is going to fund our ability to create these world-class educations and to clean the air.